Good morning. My name is Sterling Higa, Chairperson of the Authority. I'd now like to call to order the January 8th, 2025 at-large Authority meeting of the Hawaii Community Development Authority. The time is now 9 a.m.
Thank you, Chair. In accordance with Section 92-3.7 Hawaii Revised Statutes, the Hawaii Community Development Authority is holding today's at-large board meeting virtually on Zoom. The Zoom link details were included on the meeting agenda. Therefore, members of the public are welcome to join us on Zoom and also at our physical meeting site at the American Brewery Building, 547 Queen Street, second floor boardroom. The HCDA communications staff is hosting this meeting. Once the meeting begins, everyone will be muted for clear audio. Board members, if you have any comments or questions, please unmute yourselves to speak. It is important that all individuals clearly state their name, pseudonym, or other identifier name each time prior to speaking. If you wish to provide oral testimony and you're attending virtually, please indicate so by clicking the raise hand button found on your Zoom screen. If you're attending in person, you'll be called to the front of the room in the order that you signed up. All testimony will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. Your testimony must be related to an item on the agenda. Before you begin your testimony, we ask that you identify yourself and spell your name for the record. When 1 minute is remaining, 1 minute remains will be called. When 30 seconds remain will be called. When time is elapsed, time will be called and you will have 30 seconds to conclude your testimony, and then your video and audio will be turned off. If you are attending in person, the presiding officer will call the next testifier. Keep in mind that this is an opportunity to share your thoughts with us. If you ask questions during your testimony, neither the board nor the staff is required to provide an answer. If the authority's connection for the remote meeting is lost, the meeting will be recessed until the connection is restored. If the connection cannot be restored within 30 minutes, the meeting will be terminated and the authority will continue the meeting at another notice date. Thank you. Chair.
Thank you. HCDA board members, please remain visible and audible during the meeting. Also, please acknowledge you are present by either saying here or present. Let the record reflect that the following members are present. Vice Chair Ishii.
Here.
Secretary Lidstone.
Dale.
Member Miranda Johnson.
Here.
Member Anderson.
No.
Thank you. Member Evans. Excuse.
Come back.
Okay. Member Schraitz. Here. Thank you. Member Yamashita. Member Suji. Or
Present.
Member China.
Here.
Member Sakota.
Here.
And Member Gordner.
Here.
Member Leong.
Here.
Thank you. Member Light is excused. Member Kabibi.
Here.
Thank you. Member Yamasaki.
Here.
Then we go back to member Evans.
Member Evans.
Yeah.
Just mark her if she comes in late.
We have quorum.
Yes. Thank you. I'd like to take a second to introduce our newest board member, Trey Gordner. He is the Kalailoa board resident member, and also congratulations to member Lidstone, who was nominated to be the cultural specialist on the at-large authority, replacing Peter Rappo. Or yay! For today's meeting, board members will have an opportunity to ask questions or provide comments after an agenda item has been presented. Individuals from the public who have requested to provide verbal public testimony on a specific agenda item are on standby and will be permitted to provide their testimony respectively. Moving to agenda item number 2, approval of the minutes. These are the regular meeting minutes of December 4th, 2024. Board members, are there any comments or corrections to these minutes? Seeing no comments or questions, the minutes are approved as presented. Agenda item number 3 for information and discussion. This is a informational presentation and update by the HCDA staff on proposed initiatives for developing additional affordable housing projects within the Kaka'ako Community Development District. Mr. Deepak Nupani,
yes.
Program Specialist 5 will now present the staff report. Deepak.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And good morning, board members. The information item is in your packet. I'll just summarize it and then I take questions if you have any questions. Starting with providing a background to the board members and because the effort of developing affordable housing, rental housing in Kakaako has been a continuous effort by HCDA. And here in the the report itself, which was the task force from 2017, there is a summary of all the projects that HSFDC has done by itself or in conjunction with HCDA and all the rental projects and all. It's in table 2 of the task force recommendation. And the background I provided the 8 recommendations that came out of the task force effort back in early 2018. And since then, staff has been working diligently at carrying out some of those efforts. And I've noted that one of the first one that when I came back as the executive director was to make changes on equity sharing. Initially, equity sharing, couldn't be paid until the owner sold the unit, but we made that change in the rules to allow for equity sharing payment outfront, like HSFDC does. And the main reason for doing that was, if you look in table 3, that number might have changed now because that's a 2017 number. There is about $74 million worth of equity sharing that's outstanding, and that's a substantial amount of money that it could be paid out front, could go towards helping a lot of projects involved. And also in the same vein, purchasing of land in Kakaako so that we can have projects. An example of projects would be Noana Hale, Art Space, and Hale Kivalo. Those are all built on land owned by HCDA. The advantage of doing this low-income housing tax credit projects on HCDA land is that they can remain affordable for 75+ years because HCDA owns the land. Typically, a private entity building an affordable housing project like a lighted project on private land, the requirement is only 15 to 30 years, and then it can go market. So that's one of the efforts that we had worked with HSFDC and some of those projects, and now looking forward to additional projects and all. And I believe the authority purchased 20,000 square foot parcel on between Queen Street and Kabaya Street, and that we are looking at a rental project. And this is going to be more, the concept is going to be not a low income housing tax credit project that just focuses on 60% and below, but maybe for rental for the gap group, looking at maybe 80% all the way up to 140% of AMI, utilizing some of the financing program that HSFDC has. As I understand, the rental housing revolving fund, as well as the dwelling unit revolving fund, can be utilized for rental projects for higher income brackets and all. So we had some discussion with HSFDC. Right now, we're at the stage where I have just completed draft request for qualifications, and we'll probably be coming to the board next month to authorize going out with the request for qualifications to select a developer, and we can work with the developer on the project. Also, the 99-year leasehold program, the authority did authorize rulemaking for that and all, and can provide some detail on that. Put out an RFP earlier last year, actually. We had meeting with several developers locally here, and also mainland too, actually, developers. And first on the viability of leasehold product, because there's a lot of question on whether there is a market for leasehold product and it's even viable. And I think last time I made a presentation to the board, I cited from a 2019 study conducted by HHFDC on it's an opinion survey kind of thing, and the question was asked would be like, would you buy a 99-year leasehold product? And then the response was, in Honolulu, 23% responded saying yes, they would. And then the next question was, would we be willing to consider a 99-year leasehold product? And the answer was 43%. So data shows that about 66%, 2/3 of the people interviewed showed interest in leasehold product. But that's just a study, and a study is study, right? Surveys are surveys. So the approach we are taking in the 99-year leasehold product is that we have engaged a developer, because the law did provide for funding, $1.5 million in funding for pre-development studies and things like that. So utilizing that funding, we retained the developer. We have developed Ililani, which is the most recent building being developed in Kaka'ako, or in Honolulu for that matter. Well, Honolulu, not the most recent, but in Kaka'ako, the most recent. So we are working with them on a bunch of things. One would be, what would it cost to build a project like that, right? We are looking at a project, and that's probably between mid 300, 350, 360 units per mile, and also a variety of development sites, including some of the sites in Kaka'ako, as well as going out west along the transit line and in Iwilei and in Aya, Pearl Ridge area and all. But at this point, it seems like the closer you are to urban Honolulu, the more viable the project is. And the developer has also engaged an appraiser just to get an idea of what kind of discount from market price would be needed to make a leasehold product attractive. So that's some of the exercises that we are going through right now. And the pricing of the units, we are looking at all of the 100% of the unit being priced between 90% of AMI to 140% of AMI. And that ranges between, say mid 400s for a 1-bedroom unit to maybe about mid 800s for a 4-bedroom, 2-bath unit. So the mix of units that we're looking at is 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the reason for that being, you just don't want 1 and 2 bedrooms. That's for smaller families or singles and all. But you want to build these units for a family, so that, or in the building as the family grows, people can find unit in the same building instead of having to move out somewhere else. And also the urge that, okay, I have my 2-bedroom unit now, I'll sell it, make a killing, and I'll go buy some single family units out there. So it's basically making the larger units in terms of number of bedrooms, and also it becomes attractive to family to stay and move within Takahaka or within buildings. We're looking at some financing mechanism. One of the things that's kind of became clear early in the analysis, when you looked at the cost and everything. I should mention the cost too. I mean, on average, the cost is looking like it would cost probably between $630,000 to $650,000 for the development of 1 unit, and that's average. So, and that includes vertical cost, the soft cost out front, and all of that. So financing is challenging for a project like that. When we looked at the pro forma based on the revenue that will be generated based on like I said, something that's affordable at 90% of AMI to 140% of AMI, there isn't a big gap between the development cost and the revenue, which means that a project like this typically won't be financed through private resources. Like the chances of, it's slim, very slim chance of private equity wanting to invest in a project like this, because typically a private equity investor will be looking for, anywhere between 3 to 5 years for the project completion, probably 100% return. Like annually 20+% return on the project. So we have looked at some alternative financing, one being, and this was done in the 1980s by HCDA and HHFDC, where in Kauhale Kaka'ako, where the parking was developed using state funds. So it was a CIP fund. In that case, it may have been, I guess it was CIP funds instead of, revenue bonds, a CIP fund. So we're exploring that in this project where the parking garage for the project, as well as the commercial space on the ground floor of the project, would be owned by HCDA. And in this year, 25-26 fiscal year, there has been a request for $30 million in CIP funds to finance that. So it's purchased outright. That helps with the development money out front. And also we are looking at a low interest loan in the form of a building unit revolving fund from HHFDC. So that's typically 3 to 4% interest rate, low interest loan that gets paid at the completion of project, sales of the project and all. Part of the reason of looking at all this financing mechanism is that, construction cost is what it is. There is not that many options to reduce construction cost by, technology and things like that, because we're just looking at one building right now, and it's always challenging to go through innovative stuff on projects to reduce costs. So the only other area that we looked at where we could create some kind of savings in the project is in financing cost. And financing cost can be substantial in this type of project, even several $1 million and all. So the other, I must go back. And typically a project, development project would be financed through debt and equity, where 60% is debt, typically a construction loan, a commercial construction loan, and 40% comes from equity. So we are looking at that 40% to be in the form of turf and the CIP appropriation for purchase of the parking and commercial space in the building, and 60% exploring commercial loans still. So if the, it could be you could get a bank to, provide that construction loan, and also exploring at the same time the possibility of reimbursable general obligation bonds, and that's reimbursable GO, just because the interest on a reimbursable GO is going to be much less compared to what the conventional bank, commercial loan is going to be. We made a presentation to the finance chair on that, and shared the pro forma with him and all. And so, and also with Senator Chang and Senator Hashimoto, right? Senator Chang was behind 99-year leasehold product and on this bill.
And Ways and Means stuff as well.
And Ways and Means staff, and we are also presenting it to the Ways and Means vice chair and the local, Kaka'ako, senator from Kaka'ako, Senator Moriwaki. Making progress, but it's still, there are, in my opinion, several hurdles in the project and all. So one being, well, without really going out there and marketing the units, and that's the target. The program is that a part of what the developer is working on is design of the building, and then up to a level where, they can talk to Hawaiian Dredging or someone like that, contractor outside, and get some firm cost numbers, even though the costs are estimated based on their most current project, Ililani. So we're using that. So confirming those costs, and also to produce to be able to apply for condominium regime, to create a condominium regime, apply for that so that we can go out to pre-sale. And then go to a pre-sale where it's going to be a non-binding contract out front, just to gauge the interest. And to me, in my opinion, just doing a study out there and, just opinion poll, I think that's a much better way of gauging what the interest would be in the project. So we are looking at completing all of that by this summer, and that will tell us whether there's interest. And also by the end of the legislative session, we would know if there is support from the legislature in the form of, general obligation bonds or something like the project. So the contract we have with the developer right now is a pre-development contract that basically lays out the tasks that they have to perform until pre-development work, and with a stipulation that if there is no funding and there is no interest in the project, then the contract terminates there and no obligation on either side. But if there is funding, then HCDA would enter into a development agreement with the developer to develop the whole project.
Funding and interest.
Well, funding and interest, yeah. I mean, it's like, I think on a project like this, you wouldn't want to, start the project unless there is like 90% pre-sale of the units and that kind of thing. So we'll see. Right now, probably looks positive, but there's still a lot of uncertainties in my opinion, and also. Because of a number of things, because of affordability requirements, and we're trying to create it affordable. And also because it's a leasehold, so we really don't know what the price points are going to be. I mean, we have looked at some existing leasehold products and all. I mean, I think the last one was built by Marcelon in what is
Young
that?
Street.
Young Street.
Young Street, yeah, the old police station there.
Yeah, half of it.
Half of it was, and there are some old buildings that are like the Admiral Thomas and things like that. Leasehold, but that's just a data point. So hopefully, in less than, by the end of the month, we should have the report from the appraiser on what kind of discount we'll be looking at, and that will give us some idea on price points. And so it's a balancing act between meeting the affordability and what the market may support and all of that. So we'll be looking at that.
People, let me add one more thing. So I think for the board, looking forward, Deepak mentioned, kind of summer, kind of finalizing the feasibility and all that. And if it turns out to be feasible, we'll be coming back to the board under Act 97. We have to ask the board or have the board approve the site. And, there's been discussions about what sites in Kakako and so forth, but the board has to formally, identify and approve the site. So we'll be coming back to the board maybe mid-summer sometimes.
Yeah, in the next several months,
yeah,
I think.
yeah.
I mean, it may be wise to just wait until next year that the project is feasible
Yeah.
and there is funding
Yeah.
to, decide on the site. I mean, we have looked at, like I said, site from Kakako all the way out to Pearl Ridge, and all owned by either the state or the city and county. The challenge is going out west is that infrastructure is a challenge. So as you go further out, sewer capacity is not there. Avila probably, but Avila too, electrical capacity is a little bit of a challenge. So that's on the 99-year lease, and I think a part of the efforts, and it's part of objective or the executive director approved by the authority is more housing efforts. So as I mentioned, block P, we're looking at the rental, and also the board did authorize purchase of parcel on South Street. Last meeting or?
Yeah,
last meeting. We are going through the transaction process right now. We have provided them a letter of interest, and a draft PSA, so that would be their attorney is reviewing it. So looking at that project, and then we also provided some development numbers to Senator Moriwaki, right,
Correct.
for the project.
Correct.
So,
And we also met with some service providers, Waikiki Health, MedQuest, Judy Moore Peterson and her staff, and then Wes Slow's staff, Ohana Health, to talk about, you know, the model for the supportive housing and the service providers who can provide that. And it was actually very promising. We also got a lead to speak with the Weinberg Foundation about a project in Baltimore called Sojourner Place, which is a similar kind of supportive housing with a health provider. So we're gonna set up that call to talk about Sojourner Place in Baltimore. But the result of the meeting with Waikiki Health was very promising. I think, you know, some conceptual ideas is Waikiki Health could provide some of that, you know, that wrap services. And also, you know, we talked about providing a space on the ground floor for a clinic that could be available to not just the residents of the building, but also for the general public, you know, and Waikiki Health is a FQHC, fairly qualified health center, and so they can definitely provide it, and they seem very excited to have to gain a presence in Kakako. And I think in addition to urgent care, right, in Kakako, in addition to other medical facilities or clinics, I think having an FQHC to service all the senior housing projects and people, I think would be a great addition, in addition to other things. We also talked about a coffee shop and other things. So I mean, very promising.
and just continuing with the effort, you know, the recommendations, trying to implement all of it. Some of the things we have started looking at it, and it came up in 2018 in the discussions of the board was, you know, providing a short-term loan to a walk-up that can be renovated and be affordable. The only challenge is that there aren't that many walk-ups within the district for a renovation project like that. Though I have noticed that in Moilili, Makali area and all, there's 2-3 story walk-ups that have been voted for the last, I don't know how many years, but then, you know, the HCDA funds can't be used outside of the district, so that's a challenge. So that plus land banking, I think that's been the policy of the board. And the recommendation here is that whenever there is an opportunity to purchase land within the district, and whether in Kakako or even in Kawailoa, to purchase the land using the Reserve Housing Revolving Fund, and make that land available for projects like Nohona Hale and Art Space, things like that. But maybe moving forward, the focus being more on 100 to 80 to 140% of AMI rental than just low income housing tax credit projects for 60% and below, or senior housing. It seems like some of the senior housing, the demand may have slowed down a little bit, and there are a number of them within the city right now that haven't been fully occupied, so.
Be open for questions.
Sure.
Jenny? Awesome. Members, questions? I see member Sakota, and then we'll go to member Leong afterward, and then any other members that have questions. So member Sakota?
Okay, great. Good morning. Deepak, good to see you again. You know, my question is kind of an ongoing concern about just the administrative burden of these projects on the HCDA staff. So I think previously we had discussed to, you know, create, I guess, the template that the rules of the, you know, either workforce or affordable housing follows along the lines of the HHFDC parameters, so that the administrative burdens can be pushed away from the HCDA onto another well-resourced agency. Is there any, do you have any thoughts on that?
Maybe, member Sakota, let me kind of take that one, and I hope I can answer your question. You know, as the agency moves forward, I'm always acutely aware of, burdens on not just, asset management staff, but burdens on staff as a whole. Especially, I think, as the legislature asks us to do different projects, so I'm very acutely aware of it. I think in the past, the board members have also expressed, concern about staff capacity and administrative burden. So I think in the past, like if you look at projects like Honua Kaha, where we structured it a certain way, and it really requires direct staff involvement in the operation and management, even though we have a property manager. I don't think it was the best model, especially looking at it now and looking back. Maybe at the time it was, but right now, looking back, I don't think it was the best model. The kind of models that and templates that I would kind of prefer going forward is what we've done with Nohona Hale, Art Space Lost, where we've provided, as Deepak mentioned, land from our land bank, right? And provided for development. And maybe there's a ground lease with some rent, and then have an operator and make O&M, entity, operate the facility like we do at Nohona Hale and Art Space Lofts. So similarly with, like supportive housing, it was never my intent to operate and maintain something like that. We can provide the land, we can RFP for a developer to go build it vertically. But as far as operating and maintaining and providing the wrap services, I think that's better done by somebody else. And so our management and oversight over it would be more passive rather than active.
The model we are looking, Member Sakota, and a lot of this development is Nohona Hale or Art Space, something like that, where HCDA just puts out the RFP, selects a developer, and that's the limited role that HCDA will have. Then it's just the developer who finishes developing, and they'll bring in someone like EAH or someone like that that will, manage the building in the long term. So there is no need for HCDA involvement in some of these projects. So after it's constructed. So.
Member
I was mainly concerned. I mean, over the years we've had, for the Kaka'ako board, had to vote on buybacks and things like that, right? And that seems so tedious that every unit that comes up for a buyout or a sale had to come to the board level to get approved.
Yes, that is correct, because I think by rule, the board needs to authorize buyback because there is funding involved, right? So expenditure of funds. And also in that, I believe staff has worked with HHFDC and then given HHFDC that responsibility. And now I believe the statute does allow a private nonprofit too, right?
Yeah, we've engaged with Reina Miyamoto's group to be a sort of a buyback entity for units. And Member Sakota, sorry if I didn't answer your question correctly, but I think I don't know if there's any way we can get around some of that, because those are the requirements in the rules. But I think, with the 99-year leasehold project, we're kind of hoping that these are going to be what Deepak and I like to call housing for housing's sake. And, it's not housing just for investment's sake. So hopefully there's a more stable, demographic that buys that. They're going to stay around in that unit for a longer time.
Yeah, and also there is no buyback provision in the statute for the 99-year leasehold product. There is no buyback or equity sharing or anything like that. Because the requirement is that you have to be owner occupant.
Okay, Member Sakota, is satisfactory?
Somewhat, but it's still a concern of mine. This administrative burden going forward. That's the big key, administrative burden and cost of that support.
So thank you. Your concern. Thank you, Member Sakota. Member Leong, your question?
Deepak, it's great to see you back. And I was pleased to see this equity sharing table 3, because that was one of the questions I had asked long ago, and I botched the question and in the way I asked it. However, I want to ask the question about the equity sharing. When they refinance, if the owner refinances his loan, does that equity sharing become exempt? It doesn't, it's not included, it just stays there without any, and the second thing is, when they pay back the mortgage or the lease, does that pay back any of the equity sharing?
Not currently, Member Leon. The way equity sharing is that right now, either at the sale of the unit, so if a owner of a reserve housing unit sells the unit, then at the point of the sale, the equity has to be paid back. And that's usually, that's handled by escrow, and the escrow company will let HCDA know that the unit is being sold. And I'm saying that it's after the regulated term. Within the regulated term, if the owner wants to sell, then they have to come to HCDA for, HCDA's approval to sell the unit. Or now, because of the rule amendments that we did in 2020, if owner wants to pay the equity, then they can just, write to the executive director requesting that they be able to pay the equity. And I don't know if that has happened.
Not often.
Not often.
Not
That doesn't happen often because, equity sharing just sits there. And I think part of the reason that to amend the rule to allow it out front was that, it's fixed in time, right? The project was sold, say, 10 years ago, and the equity sharing was set at that time, and let's say it was $100,000. Then it's $100,000 in 2014 dollars. So the value now has really, has gone down, right? And that's one of the idea that you have $74 million outside, outstanding there. So let's open a pathway for this to come back to the agency to be used instead of just waiting for someone to sell the unit and pay the equity sharing. So
I agree. And quite frankly, if I were an owner, I wouldn't pay the equity up. It's an interest-free loan. I mean, anybody who had any intelligence wouldn't do that. So, can I suggest that you guys, when you do any more, you rethink about how you might finance that? I know that it's supposed to help them, but make sure that the inflation keeps up with the equity.
Yeah. Yes, Member Leon, and I should note that in the most current version of our amendment to the Kakaako Reserve Housing rules, we take that into account. So instead of having a fixed number, it's a percentage of the market value of the unit. So it would be the same percent. Say someone buys it, initially at $400,000, and the equity sharing was 20%, and sells it at $700,000. Now the equity sharing would be 20% of $700,000 instead of $400,000.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Member Leo.
Thank you, Member Leon. We need to have less sharing in the equity sharing.
Yeah.
Too much sharing. Members, any other comments or questions for Deepak? I'm sure.
Thanks, Chair. Deepak, thanks for that detailed overview and kind of insight into the 99-year leasehold pilot program. I'm assuming that, I understand kind of the constraints and whether it makes sense to move forward on the project, but I'm assuming, part of the pilot nature that in order to still get value out of it, if we don't move forward with an actual project, that we'll kind of be able to package lessons learned and make potentially recommendations for changes to the program so that it could be, that type of project could be successful in the future.
Yes, that's the alternative outcome. And right now we're hoping that there's going to be a project and it gets built.
Yeah.
But depending on whether there's funding or there is even interest in those kind of product, then we will make recommendation. And I think it's probably part of our legislative report, right? Year-end report to the legislature on that particular portion of it. statute, so.
Okay.
And I think member strikes too, it's, you know, if it's not feasible at the end of this study. And we go back and recommend changes, it's also up to the champion of the original bill to decide whether or not they want to champion different kind of pilot programs with different parameters.
You know, and we could achieve some similar kind of goal by, you know, allowing fee simple sale. And use HHFDC's 201H rules for a project, so whereby, you know, it's sold in fee simple, but 60% of the units would be affordable and would be regulated. So.
And just one last thing, so I also kind of caught the attention when you mentioned the different financing mechanisms for the parking component. And I noticed also in the permitted interaction group report, the last recommendation about developing a public parking structure. I guess that would be to share among different projects. I think, you know, that holds a lot of potential in these very dense and urban areas, especially in transit-oriented development area, to allow for more of that, I guess, market matching between kind of supply and demand for parking as it, you know, different transportation options come into play, that you're not then stuck with having the parking on site. I think that can provide a lot more flexibility in buildings and allow more residential units on the site if there's something maybe nearby that can accommodate the parking needs. So I didn't notice any discussion on that in the PIG report. So I don't know if there's any more insight or that if you recall any of that.
Yes, the member sites, I think you are correct, and I think that's part of the effort. That the challenge in Kaka'ako has been one to HCDA doesn't own much land anymore, right? So a lot of the smaller parcels are not look at the size of the parcel. If you want to build a parking garage, that's reasonable and cost effective. You'd have to have upwards of an acre land to be able to do that, at least 40,000 square feet at a minimum. And you know, early on there was an effort like Kawale Kaka'ako is an example, because then parking was over parked, right? There's more parking than necessary, and that serves as a regional parking. Also, in the 99-year leasehold, what we are looking at is that if HCDA owns parking, then it's going to be shared parking. So all the, you know, it will be leased to the unit owner separately, so they'll have a lease, but then it can be shared parking at the same time. So unbundling parking from the unit and that. And also, we are constantly looking at, you know, land for where parking could be. The challenge there is that, you know, parking initially won't make a lot of revenue to finance bond. Like you couldn't get a revenue bond and be able to finance a parking garage. Once the debt is paid, then a parking garage is a cash cow. Like Kawale Kaka'ako, we know that, you know, there's no debt remaining, it's all paid up, and it's a cash cow. But out front, it's a little bit of a challenge. We have tried that in the Kaka'ako Makai for medical school and cancer center and build a parking garage, but not a lot of support from the legend funding for that kind of project. So.
Yeah, I understand, yeah, cost. I think if maybe it's looked at in terms of the trade-off between additional dwelling units and, you know, parking, maybe that might tip the scale.
Thank you, Member Strikes. Members, any other questions? Before we go to Member Gordner, I just wanted to state for the record that Member Evans arrived at 9:06 and Member Yamashita was actually here at 9 a.m. There were just some technical difficulties during the roll call. Member Gordner, did you have a question?
I did, but it was addressed in that last answer. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other comments or questions from members, we'll move to public testimony. Do we have any persons pre-signed up for testimony?
Anybody? No.
Do we have any persons present or online who wish to provide testimony? Okay. Seeing no testimony, thank you, Deepak.
Thank you, Chair.
We'll move now to the next item on the agenda, a presentation of the audited financial statements for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024. by the auditor KKDLY LLC. Mr. Garrett Sasaki, Chief Financial Officer, will now introduce Ralph Kanetoku and Guy Nishihira of KKDLY, who will present the audit findings.
Thank you, morning chair, members. We have our auditors on the call. They're going to share our presentation and put it up on the screen. Hey, Guy, is it letting you share?
Yeah, let me. Yeah, I believe so. Can everybody see the presentation on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Why don't we start? Thank you, Garrett. Good morning, everyone. My name's Ralph Kanetoku. With me is Guy Nishihira. We're here to present the results of our financial audit of the HCDA. So overall, the audit proceeded on schedule as planned, and the HCDA was able to meet the financial reporting deadlines of the state of Hawaii, as well as its own financial reporting deadlines. Our discussion topics for today, can everyone hear us?
Yes.
Okay, so our discussion topics today include the scope of our audit engagements. We'll briefly discuss the reports that we issued as a result of our audit, and then go over some information related to the conduct of our audit. So this is information required to be presented to those charged with governance. And then we'll open it up for any questions that you may have that we can answer for you. Okay, scope of services. So we were engaged to audit the financial statements and the supplemental information of the HCDA as of and for the year ended June 30th, 2024. So our audit was under contract with the Office of the Auditor. And just for your information, we did have a detailed exit conference with HCDA management and the Office of the Auditor in December. And we'll highlight the more significant matters for you today. There were 3 reports that we delivered as a result of our audit, first being the independent auditor's report. So in that report, which accompanies HCDA's financial statements, we state that our audit was conducted in accordance with all applicable professional standards. That would be auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America, as well as government auditing standards. And based upon our report, which was performed in accordance with the applicable professional standards, we issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements. So an unmodified opinion indicates that based upon our audit, we believe the financial statements that you have before you are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So a clean opinion on HCDA's financial statements. The second report is the independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance. Government auditing standards require that we review and report upon internal control of financial reporting, as well as compliance with laws and regulations. So in this second report, we state that based upon our review of HCDA's internal controls, we found no material weaknesses in internal controls over financial reporting. We also indicate that based upon our review, we found no instances with non-compliance with laws and regs that would have a direct and material effect on HCDA's financial statements. And the third report, again, is the required communication letter to those charged with governance. And Guy will highlight some of the more significant matters that was contained in that report.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. So like Ralph alluded to, the third report was a report on to those charged with governance, and it's a required report that highlights some detailed information about the conduct of our audit of the HCDA as of June 30, 2024. It talks a little bit about the qualitative aspects of accounting policies, Just to let you know that HCDA management has the responsibility for the selection and use of appropriate accounting policies. The more significant accounting policies used by the HCDA were described in note 2 to the financial statements. We noted that there were no new accounting policies adopted, and the application of existing policies were not changed during fiscal year 2024. We also noted no transactions were entered into by the HCDA during the year for which there's a lack of any authoritative guidance or consensus. All significant transactions have been recognized in the financial statements in the proper period as well. We encountered no significant difficulties in dealing with management in performing and completing our audit. Again, as Ralph alluded to, we did have an exit conference with management of HCDA as well as the Office of the Auditor, and we did communicate, and we'd like to communicate again to Craig and Garrett and the HCDA team for giving us full access to information, people, to conduct our audit timely and efficiently. So again, thank you very much for the assistance in performing the audit. Moving on, there were no disagreements with management on financial accounting, reporting, or auditing matters that were noted during the audit. The next section just talks about accounting estimates. Again, accounting estimates are an integral part of the financial statements prepared by management. And then we just want to bring to light some more significant accounting estimates affecting the HCDA's financial statements. These include the valuation of accounts and loans receivables, carrying value of capital assets, as well as the allocated share of the state's net OPEB and pension liability. So during the audit, we evaluated the methods, assumptions, and data used by management to develop the estimate and determine that they are reasonable in relation to the financial statements taken as a whole. We're also required to, professional standards require that we specifically communicate to you in writing at least annually that we're independent accountants with respect to HCDA. We do confirm as of the date of the audit report, which was December 3rd, 2024, we are independent accountants with respect to HCDA under all relevant professional and regulatory standards. I believe that's all that we have as far as like the formal presentation for the board. And then I guess we can open it up for any discussion or questions that anybody may have.
Members, do you have any questions for the auditors or staff? I'll go with I'll tee up staff to answer the obvious question. Either Craig or Garrett, do you want to talk about how appropriations are recorded in here and explain why the balance increased by like 130 million?
That's on.
Yes, in 2024 reported the Pilikunui, which West Oahu and Evelyn Kapalama projects. There were significant increases from previous years.
Right. And
That's on page 8 of the audit.
yeah, those are recorded on page 8 of the audit, but as the funds are released, that balance will go down, right?
Right, and you see that go out in expenses.
Yeah.
So we're just holding those funds that we were released to us, like people.
Kakako is not that profitable. Member Yamasaki?
Oh, yeah. Oh, thanks, Chair. I had a quick question for the auditor. On one of your notes on page 39, development credits, number 14. Page 39 at the bottom, note number 14, development credits. I'm curious what that is and how does one derive I guess it's called a public facilities dedication credit.
Member Yamasaki, we can answer that one.
Okay, thanks.
Well, let me answer the one above on page 39 on sort of these development credits. Is that the development credits or the floor area credits?
So
development
Yamasaki,
credit.
these are actually very old like historical amounts that just remain on our books. We're not actively using or holding these credits for anything.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It actually predates me by many years.
Before you were born, probably, Garrett.
Deepak can give the background on this one. We'll call him up.
I guess my general question is what's the value of those credits on our books? And is it reflected on our books to allocate like low income housing credits or workforce development credits? And I know of those, but I wasn't sure about this particular
Yeah,
component.
the development credits, member Yamasaki, is based on either the public facility dedication fee that the developer paid, but the project didn't go through. So instead of returning the public facility dedication to fees or land to the developer and HCDA entered into an agreement so that the developer, the landowner, keeps the credit for future development.
Yeah.
It's one of those. And similar credits for reserve housing. So on a project, reserve housing credit, but then project didn't get built, but the developer holds the reserve housing credit. So those are the things. I think there were two instances. I think one particular project, just not too far from here, that didn't go through, and then it's Kamehameha School, I believe, that holds some of the credits.
Member Yamasaki, does that answer your question?
Yeah, and maybe I can follow up later with Craig on or with Deepak later.
Sure.
Just what the nuances, what I'm curious about.
Member Yamasaki. Members, any other comments or questions for the auditors or staff? Member Gordner.
Yes, in the last item, Deepak mentioned reserved housing revolving fund, but I don't see that listed on pages 10 and 11. So was that part of the audit? And no, why not?
Member Gorner, that's a sub-account of the Hawaii Community Development Fund.
Got it. Thank you.
That in the financial highlights.
It's gonna be in the monthly financial package, actually. There's a breakdown by those sub-accounts.
I think, Member Gordon, if you look at tab 4 of your packet, flip through to the second page of it, you're gonna see reserve housing sub-account.
Members, any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll move now to public testimony. Do we have any persons pre-signed up for testimony? Do we have any persons present or online who wish to provide testimony? Seeing none, we'll move now to that final item, the report of the executive director, the monthly report and other status reports, and the monthly financial highlights for November 2022.
Thanks, Chair. So again, as I mentioned in tab 4, the financial highlights for November 2024 included it's kind of a dashboard to show all the fund balances and everything, and it's self-explanatory, but if you have any questions, Garrett and I are available for that. Thank you.
Members, any comments or questions on the executive director's report? Seeing none, we'll go to public testimony. Do we have any persons pre-signed up for testimony? Oh, sorry. Sorry.
I apologize, Chair. I did have one. So I'm looking at Exhibit 3, the Kakaw Community Development Administrative Expenses. And I see that personal services and repair and maintenance have a pretty high variance relative to budget. And I just wanted to check in on that.
Agreed.
Personnel services, it's more timing. The way the payroll hits versus the budget. At the end of the year, it usually gets pretty close. For repair and maintenance, The budget amount is just average monthly amount. It doesn't reflect, you know, what's needed per month as repairs are needed.
Okay, I'm looking at the I'm also looking at the fiscal year to date for both of those lines though, and I hear your point about the variance. But in Exhibit 3 and Exhibit 4, the repair and maintenance, for example, let's just take Exhibit 4, repair and maintenance, you know, significantly higher actual than budget. Okay. But in the fiscal year to date, you know, we're at 20,000 and the annual budget is 22,000. So are you saying that that I should be thinking of that relative to the calendar year, or should I be interpreting that we're already close to our fiscal year budget for repair and maintenance in November, halfway through the fiscal year?
It's for the fiscal year, so we are a little bit over the anticipated budget.
There's a issue here between calendar and fiscal year, right? Is there?
No, this is for a fiscal year, so the fiscal
Changes in autumn.
year to
Fiscal
date,
year.
that's from July through November.
Well, so why are there differing amounts though for the annual budget?
Because the annual represents July through June.
Yes,
fiscal
so
year
I
to
just
date-
want to confirm that I am interpreting this correctly, that, you know, fiscal year to date, actual 20,600, annual budget 22,000, which means we are, you know, at kind of 90% of what we expected to spend for the entire year already. Is that, I'm interpreting that
Yes.
correctly? Okay.
Yes, correct. But that amount for that one role is not a statutory limit. It's just an internal estimate for that expense category.
Yes,
So as long
I
as-
I understand. I'm just wondering if, you know, if we see halfway through the year that we're, you know, expending significantly relative to our annual budget on repair and maintenance. I just wanted more information about that. And if that's, you know, preemptive and we're probably going to get to 22,000 all well and good, or if there are, you know, unexpected expenses and it might look more like 40 or 50,000. I just thought that'd be information that the board should know.
Okay, we'll keep track of that.
Would it be
Thank you.
possible at the next meeting just to update on the repair and maintenance where a more detailed accounting of where that's going?
Of course.
A projection,
A projection, yeah.
projection.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the personal
Yes.
services as well, if you will.
Thank you, Member Gordner. Members, any other comments or questions? Okay, public testimony, any persons pre-signed up for testimony? Any present or online who wish to provide testimony? Okay, seeing none, we'll move now to adjourn the meeting. Thank you to those who joined us on Zoom or in person. That concludes our business for the general authority for today. The meeting is adjourned. The time is now 10:03 a.m. 5-minute break.
Thank
Thank you.
Take a 5-minute break and we'll reconvene at 10:08.